AITA for backing out of my deal after she mocked me as the help at a charity gala? I'm Damien, 42, and by the time Bianca handed me that staff badge, I had been her husband for 9 years. We still had the same stupid argument every Sunday about whether pancakes counted as breakfast or dessert, and I still knew exactly which corner of the couch she liked for kicking off her heels after an event. That's the part people miss when they hear what I did next. I didn't hate my wife that night. I was just finally done pretending disrespect was a personality quirk I had to love. Bianca was 38, beautiful in that polished way that made people straighten their posture when she entered a room. She could make small talk sound like music. She remembered donor names, birthdays, family scandals, and who preferred sparkling water with lime. When we first met, that confidence pulled me in. She was sharp and funny, and she made the world feel like a party I'd somehow been allowed into. I was private, not shy, exactly, just not interested in turning every room into a scoreboard. Bianca came from a family where money was treated like oxygen. You didn't point it out because it was assumed to be there, and if you didn't have it, you learned to speak softly around people who did. I made a decision early in our marriage that I didn't want money to become the loudest person in the relationship. That decision was mine, and for a long time, I thought it was noble. It wasn't always noble. Sometimes it was just avoidance with better manners. When Bianca and I got serious, her parents, Conrad and Elaine, made their opinion of me clear without ever saying anything rude enough to quote at a dinner table. Elaine had a soft voice and expensive patience. She once patted my hand and said, "You must feel very lucky, Damien." I said, "I do." She smiled like I'd missed the point. "No, I mean really lucky." Conrad was more direct, but he wrapped it in business language. At family dinners, he called me our humble addition. At holiday events, he would say things like, "Damien keeps Bianca connected to simpler things." People laughed because Conrad laughed first. At the beginning, Bianca corrected them. She would squeeze my arm and say, "Don't underestimate him." Or she would roll her eyes and tell her mother, "He's not a charity case." Those moments mattered to me. They made me believe she saw me even when other people didn't. Then, slowly, she stopped correcting them. At first, it was small. A friend would say, "Bianca, I love that you married someone so grounded," and Bianca would laugh a little too long. Another time, at a dinner party, Elaine told a woman beside her, "Damien is very low maintenance. Bianca never has to worry about him being difficult." Bianca tilted her head and said, "That's one of my favorite things about him." I waited until we got home. She had kicked off her heels, dropped her earrings into the little blue bowl on the front table, and curled into her corner of the couch as if nothing was wrong. I stood in the kitchen with 2 glasses of water and said, "I need you to stop making me sound like furniture." She looked up from her phone. "What? Low maintenance. Simple. Grounded. It always lands the same way." She sighed like I was asking her to rewrite her entire personality. "Damien, nobody means it like that." Then correct them when they do. They don't. You're hearing everything as an insult. I set the water on the table. I know the difference between a compliment and a leash. That annoyed her. She sat up straighter. "See, that's the thing. You say you don't care about status, but then you get upset when people don't treat you like some mystery power player. I'm not asking to be treated like a power player. I'm asking not to be treated like a punchline." She leaned back into the couch. "Then stop acting wounded every time someone makes a joke." After that, I picked my battles. That was my mistake. I told myself every marriage had sore spots. I told myself Bianca's family was dramatic and class-conscious, and I had chosen to marry into that. I told myself the private version of Bianca still loved me, even if the public version had started enjoying the gap she invented between us. The gap became part of her story. At events, she introduced me as the man who kept her humble. She would laugh and add, "Damien has never been complicated. He keeps me from floating away." It sounded sweet if you didn't know her. But when she said, "humble," she looked at me like I was the floor. Her friend Lila was around for a lot of it. Lila lived for proximity to rich people and treated gossip like cardio. She wasn't cruel in the same way some people can be. Lila was more careless than evil. She laughed when Bianca laughed. She filmed little moments at events because everything had to become a story later. She always seemed to assume she was watching cute banter between a powerful woman and her harmless husband. Adrian was different. Adrian was Bianca's former boyfriend. and he had the kind of smooth confidence that only worked in rooms already built to admire him. He wore expensive clothes without looking like he had chosen them, said people's names slowly like he was giving them a gift, and smiled at me like we were both aware I was the before picture. Bianca insisted they were just friends now. "He's useful in donor circles," she said once, fastening an earring in front of the bedroom mirror. "People like him." "People like a lot of things," I said. She met my eyes in the mirror. "Don't be insecure." That word became her favorite door slam. Insecure, sensitive, dramatic, defensive. Anytime I questioned a pattern, she turned it into a flaw in my personality. The irony was that I had given her family more quiet help than any of them had earned. Years before the gala, Conrad's family company had stumbled hard. Not publicly, at least not in the glossy version people heard at fundraisers, but behind the scenes, there were missed projections, nervous creditors, a debt structure that was eating them alive, and one very tense dinner where Conrad's hand shook slightly around his wine glass. Bianca was scared. Not crying on the floor scared, Bianca didn't do that. She went silent, which was worse. One night she sat beside me in bed with the lamp on and said, "If my father loses the company, it will destroy him." I asked questions. I read documents. I spoke with Victor, who chaired the board and knew exactly how fragile things were. Victor was the kind of man who used silence like punctuation. He never wasted a word, which made his words difficult to ignore. I agreed to provide backing and structure a rescue that protected my interests without making me the public face of anything. There were agreements, decision rights, pledge terms, and documentation. Conrad hated that he needed me, so I gave him privacy. Bianca begged me not to embarrass her father, so I gave her discretion. Victor promised not to mention my role unless it became necessary. For years, I let Conrad take credit for the recovery. I let Elaine act like her family's image had survived because of discipline and legacy. I let Bianca enjoy the upgraded reputation that came with being the elegant daughter of a family that had supposedly steadied itself through sheer competence. I told myself I was protecting my marriage. What I was really doing was teaching people that my silence was available. A few months before the gala, Conrad started bringing up documents. The first time was after dinner at his house. Elaine had served little plates of food that looked too pretty to eat, and Bianca had spent most of the night beside Adrian, who had been invited because, according to her, his network matters. Conrad found me near the sideboard. "Damien," he said, holding a sealed envelope, "I'd like you to review a minor cleanup to the marital property arrangement." I looked at the envelope before I looked at him. "What kind of cleanup?" "Just family housekeeping. These things are easier when nobody overthinks them." "Then you won't mind if my attorney reads it." His mouth barely moved. "Of course not." But his eyes sharpened. I took the envelope home and put it in the drawer beside our old wedding photo, mostly because Bianca told me not to make it a thing. "It's boring," she said. "Dad just wants the paperwork cleaner." "Cleaner for who?" She made a face. "For everyone. Damien, you always make financial conversations feel hostile." "They usually become hostile when someone asks me to sign something before I read it." She laughed, but not with warmth. "You can be so intense for someone who pretends not to care about money." That was when I should have pulled everything into the light. I didn't. I gave the envelope to Mara, my attorney, and told her to review it when she had a chance. Mara was blunt, careful, and allergic to theatrics. She had worked with me long enough to know I preferred clean lines and quiet exits. She called me 2 days later. "Did you ask for this?" she said. "No." "Did Bianca?" "She says her father did." Mara was quiet for half a second. "This isn't cleanup." My stomach went cold. She explained it in plain language. The draft would have shifted control over certain assets Bianca had never purchased, never protected, and never had authority over. It softened some of my decision rights, gave Bianca approval power where she previously had none, and created language Conrad could later use to argue family reliance. "It's not catastrophic if unsigned," Mara said, "but it's very useful to them if signed." "Can they force it?" "No, but they can pressure you." I almost laughed. That explains the sudden concern with my comfort level around donor conversations. Mara didn't laugh. "Do not sign anything in a social setting. Not after dinner. Not after a gala. Not because someone says the notary is already there. Every money conversation goes in writing now." I said I understood, but I still didn't understand the whole thing. That came the week of the gala. Bianca had been preparing for it like a general planning a battle and a bride planning a second wedding. The gala was for a charity attached to her family's public image, but everyone knew the real purpose was confidence. Donors, partners, board members, old family friends, and people with money who liked being photographed near other people with money. It was the room Conrad needed to impress. Our kitchen island disappeared under invitation lists, seating charts, silent auction cards, bid numbers, and little sample place cards Bianca kept rearranging. She complained about centerpieces, lighting, and whether photographers understood angles that don't flatten the room. One evening, I came home and saw the printed seating charts spread across the counter. I found Bianca's name at the main donor table. Conrad and Elaine were there. Victor was there. Adrian was there, placed directly to Bianca's right. My name was not at the table. I scanned the chart again, slower. Bianca walked in wearing leggings and one of my old sweatshirts, the version of her I still loved enough that it hurt. You left me off the main table, I said. She didn't even look startled. You'll float around. Float around. You hate those conversations anyway. You get quiet, and people have to work too hard. You didn't ask me. She smiled at the chart, moving Adrian's place card half an inch. I know you. There are small sentences that carry a lot of disrespect if you hear them at the right time. I looked at Adrian's name again. Why is he next to you? Because he understands the room. I said nothing for a few seconds. She adjusted her own place card and finally looked up. Please don't make tonight heavy, she said. It matters. I wasn't planning to. You say that, but your silence makes people uncomfortable. I could have argued. Instead, I walked to the refrigerator, took out a bottle of water, and leaned against the counter. That was when Bianca's phone lit up between us. It was face up. I didn't touch it. I didn't unlock it. I didn't open anything. The preview was right there. Conrad, make him feel small tonight. He signs easier when he thinks he doesn't belong. For a second, the kitchen got very quiet. Bianca was in the pantry, talking about auction cards, unaware that her father had just turned embarrassment into evidence. I looked at the notification until the screen went dark. Then I said, You still want me at the gala? She came out holding a box of place cards. Of course. We need to look normal. Normal. That night, after Bianca fell asleep, I opened the drawer with the envelope. Mara had already warned me, but I read the draft again. Signature tabs. Notary page. Soft language that sounded harmless until you understood what it did. The agreement wasn't a marriage update. It was a leash with nicer formatting. I went outside and called Owen. Owen was my closest friend and the only person who had ever told me my patience was starting to look self-destructive without making it sound like an insult. He answered on the second ring. What happened? I told him about the seating chart, Adrian, the document, and Conrad's text preview. He let out a low breath. Damien. I know. No, I don't think you do. They're rehearsing your humiliation. I looked back through the window at the kitchen island, at the place cards Bianca had stacked so neatly. I keep thinking there's a version of this where I can handle it privately. Private is what you do when people respect private. They're building a public story around you. I don't want to blow up my marriage in front of a ballroom. Then don't. But stop protecting people who are blowing it up and expecting you to clean the floor after. I didn't answer. Owen's voice softened a little. When someone uses your silence to lie about you, silence stops being class. That line stayed with me. The next morning, I called Mara and told her everything. She didn't sound surprised. Attorneys rarely do. Maybe that's why they're useful. Don't make a scene for their benefit, she said. Make a record for yours. What does that mean tonight? You don't sign anything. You don't go into a side room alone with Conrad. You don't let Bianca turn an argument into a video clip. If they corner you, you leave. And the pledge. There was an untransferred personal pledge tied to the gala. It had been discussed, praised, and quietly used in their projections, but the language hadn't locked me in yet. I had delayed final authorization because Mara had been reviewing the amendment. We clarify its status in writing tomorrow, Mara said. If it hasn't legally transferred, they don't get to spend your money while trying to strip your control. I called Victor after that. He had already left me a voicemail asking whether Conrad had permission to reference the company's recovery during the gala speeches. Victor's exact words were, I suspect Conrad intends to simplify history again. When we spoke, Victor asked, Are you sure you want it set in that room? Only if Conrad makes that room part of the lie. He will. Then keep it factual. Victor paused. You understand what this will do. Yes. Good. I'm tired of watching him stand on your shoulders and call it posture. The evening of the gala, Bianca dressed like she expected to be photographed from every angle. She wore a dark green gown that made her look effortless, though I had watched the effort for 2 hours. She adjusted my jacket in the mirror, smoothing the lapel like she was preparing me for inspection. Try not to drift tonight, she said. I know exactly how much tonight matters. She smiled, missing the edge completely. Good. The ballroom was already bright when we arrived. There was a check-in table with printed name tags and donor lists, a silent auction lined with bid cards, tall centerpieces that made it hard for anyone seated across from each other to talk without leaning sideways. An event staff moving trays through clusters of people who all seemed to know where to stand to be seen. Bianca complained under her breath because the photographer caught her from the wrong side at the entrance. Can you believe that? She said. Tragic, I said. She looked at me sharply, but before she could decide whether I was mocking her, Lila appeared with 2 other women whose names I only knew because Bianca had corrected my pronunciation once in the car. Bianca, Lila said, air-kissing her cheek. You look insane. In a good way. Bianca smiled. Thank you. Lila turned to me. Damien, you clean up nicely. Lila. She glanced at my blank lapel. No badge. Before I could answer, Bianca reached into a little basket on the check-in table and pulled out a plastic event staff badge on a clip. The badge said staff in thick black letters. I looked at it. Then I looked at her. She smiled the way she smiled when she knew people were watching. Here, she said, clipping it to my jacket before I moved. Since you won't be sitting, this will keep people from asking questions. Lila laughed, startled and delighted, already lifting her phone. Bianca patted my chest once, right over the badge. Smile, Damien. Useful looks good on you. The worst part wasn't that she said it. It was how practiced it sounded. Adrian appeared beside her, wearing a tux and the small grin of a man enjoying theater from the front row. That's generous of him, he said. I looked at Bianca. She didn't flinch. Elaine stood a few feet away, watching with a glass of water in her hand. Bianca, Elaine said softly, don't tease him too much. But she was smiling. Conrad stood near the donor table with a sealed envelope under one arm. He saw the badge and didn't look surprised. He looked satisfied. That was the final confirmation I needed. I could have ripped the badge off. I could have made the room stop right there. I could have told every donor that the woman laughing beside them had just followed her father's instruction to make her husband feel small enough to sign away control. Instead, I reached for a champagne tray from a passing server. I can be very helpful, I said. Bianca's eyebrows lifted. She thought I was surrendering. That was another mistake. For the next 20 minutes, I served champagne. Not to the whole room. Just enough. Enough for Lila to film a clip before slowly lowering her phone when my comm started to feel less funny. Enough for Bianca's friends to laugh in that careful way people laugh when they aren't sure if cruelty is officially allowed. Enough for Elaine to flutter around pretending concern while enjoying the bruise. Enough for Conrad to glance at the envelope and then at me like he was watching a lock loosen. A few guests looked uncomfortable. Victor saw me from across the room. He didn't come over. He gave me one short nod and continued speaking with 2 board members near the silent auction table. That nod steadied me more than any speech could have. Bianca, seated near Adrian at the main donor table, watched me with a smile that kept asking the room to agree with her. See, this is what he is. Sweet. Useful. Out of place, but grateful. At one point, I placed a glass in front of Adrian. He leaned back. You're taking this well. I tend to notice where things are headed. He chuckled. That sounds ominous. It should. His smile flickered. Then Conrad took the microphone. The room settled. Silverware quieted. People turned their chairs. Bianca straightened with that glowing expression she wore when her family was about to be admired. Conrad thanked the donors, the charity committee, the volunteers, the board, his wife, his daughter, and everyone who had stood firm through seasons of uncertainty. He had a good voice for a room like that. Warm, commanding, expensive. Families endure, he said, when everyone understands what they bring to the table. Legacy is not built by noise. It is built by discipline, loyalty, and knowing one's role. The applause was polite but strong. I stood at the edge of the ballroom holding a tray with 3 untouched glasses on it. That, I thought, is the closest he has ever come to thanking me. Conrad continued. He spoke about resilience. He spoke about stewardship. He spoke about the company's recovery as if he had personally dragged it from a burning building. Then Victor stood. Conrad's smile tightened. Victor, did you want to add something? I do, Victor said, already walking toward the microphone. There are people who need to raise their voices to command a room. Victor was not one of them. He simply arrived at the microphone and waited until the room understood that it should listen. Before we thank anyone else, Victor said, we need to recognize the person who made tonight possible. Bianca smiled. She thought he meant her. Victor turned toward me. That person is Damien. The room shifted. Not loudly. No dramatic gasp. Just a wave of attention turning in one direction. I felt it move across my skin. Bianca's smile died so quickly it looked like it was unplugged. Conrad stood too fast. Victor. Victor lifted one hand without looking at him. I'll keep this brief and factual. Several years ago, when the company faced a critical financial crisis, Damien provided the backing and structure that made recovery possible. Without his support, there would be no recovery to celebrate tonight. Without his authorization, the largest pending pledge connected to this event does not move forward. Silence. Elaine's water glass tipped against her plate and spilled onto the white tablecloth. She grabbed a napkin but didn't seem to know what to do with it. Lila's phone was no longer raised. Adrian looked at Bianca, then at me, then down at the table like he had suddenly discovered the program booklet was fascinating. Conrad stepped toward Victor. This is not the venue for internal matters. Victor looked at him calmly. You made the company's recovery part of your remarks. Accuracy is not an interruption. Someone near the back murmured. A board member leaned toward another. Bianca was staring at the staff badge on my jacket. I set the tray down on the nearest service table. The sound was small. In that room, it landed like a gavel. I unclipped the badge, walked to Bianca's table, and placed it in front of her on the white tablecloth. The black letters faced up. Staff. Her eyes were wide. Not sad. Not sorry. Furious. You wanted everyone to see what I was worth, I said. So let's let them. Her face tightened. You're humiliating me. No, I said. You built the stage. I just stopped playing the part. Nobody laughed. That was the first honest sound that room had made all night. Conrad moved in quickly, his voice low and sharp. Damien, come with me. We need to discuss this privately. He still had the sealed envelope tucked under his arm. I looked at it. No. Don't be emotional. I'm not being emotional. That's why I'm not signing. His jaw worked once. This can still be handled privately. You lost private when you made public useful. Bianca stood so quickly her chair scraped behind her. Damien, enough. I looked at her and felt the strange, clean grief of seeing someone clearly when you had spent years editing the picture for them. Any conversation about money, property, or our marriage goes through Mara now. Her voice dropped. You are not doing this here. You already did. Then I left. Outside, the valet area was cold and bright. People were arriving late, stepping around me with their coats and phones and polite curiosity. I handed my ticket to the valet and stood with my hands in my pockets while Bianca came out behind me, holding her purse like a weapon. You made me look stupid, she said. I stared at her. For 9 years, I had known her coffee order, her couch corner, the way she rubbed her thumb against her ring when she was nervous. I had loved that woman. Some part of me probably still did. You made me look disposable, I said. I corrected one of us. Her mouth opened, then closed. Then came the first flash of panic. Not regret. Panic. Damien, my father was just trying to protect the family. From me. You know what I mean. I do now. The car pulled up. I got in before she could follow. My phone started ringing before the valet closed the door. Bianca. Conrad. Bianca again. Elaine. Bianca. A number I didn't recognize. Lila sent a message that only said, "What is happening?" I didn't answer anyone. At a red light, I sent Bianca one text. Any conversation about money, property, or our marriage goes through attorneys now. She replied immediately. Don't be cruel. Then, you can't just leave. Then, you embarrass me in front of everyone. Then, please answer. I put the phone face down and drove to Owen's place. He opened the door before I knocked twice. He looked at my jacket, where the staff badge had left a small hole in the fabric. Tell me you didn't sign anything, he said. I didn't sign anything. Good. You want coffee, or a wall to stare at? A wall. He stepped aside. Living room has the better one. I sat on his couch with my phone buzzing beside me and felt nothing for about 10 minutes. Not peace. Not victory. Just the absence of performing. Then I called Mara. She answered with, "Did you sign?" "No." "Did you threaten anyone?" "No." "Did you remove yourself from the situation?" "Yes." "Good. Send me every message. Tomorrow we put it in writing." Mara's letter went out the next morning. It wasn't dramatic. That was the point. It rejected any property amendment or marital agreement presented under social pressure. It clarified that no signature would be considered without independent review, written disclosures, and formal negotiation. It requested an accounting of prior funds, decision records, public claims related to the company's recovery, and any communications connected to the proposed amendment. It also confirmed that the pending personal pledge had not transferred and would not be authorized under the current circumstances. Mara called after sending it. "They tried to use embarrassment as pressure," she said. "We are going to answer with documentation." Bianca called me 17 times that day. I know because the number sat on my screen like a scoreboard I didn't want. Conrad called 6 times. Elaine left 1 voicemail. "Damien, this is Elaine. I know emotions were high, but surely we can all be graceful about this. No one benefits from making private discomfort public." Grace was what Elaine called silence when it benefited her. Mara responded to Elaine, not me. Bianca sent texts that moved through all the stages of image loss. First, anger. "You had no right to let Victor say that." Then blame. "You could have warned me." Then the old insult dressed as concern. "This is exactly why I didn't want you at the table. You don't know how to handle these rooms." Then panic. "Please don't pull the pledge. Dad is furious. This affects more than just us." I didn't reply. By noon, Victor had sent a follow-up email to Conrad, copied to the necessary board members. Mara forwarded me the thread because parts of it involved my agreements. Victor's language was surgical. "Your family's personal pressure has now become a governance concern." Conrad replied, "That is an overstatement." Victor answered, "No, Conrad. Your speech was an overstatement. We are requesting a formal review of public claims, donor representations, and authority around pending funds." That was when Conrad stopped calling me. The board didn't collapse. The company didn't explode overnight. Real life is slower and messier than people want revenge stories to be. But Conrad lost the thing he valued most, control of the room. He had to explain why a major backer had been wearing a staff badge at a donor event. He had to explain why a property amendment existed. He had to explain why the pending pledge he had implied was not secure at all. People didn't need a scandal to understand the shape of it. They just needed the facts. Lila texted me 2 days later. "I thought you two joke like that." I deleted the clip. "I'm sorry," I laughed. I read it, put the phone down, and made coffee. An hour later, another message came in. "She always made it sound like you barely contributed. Like you were just happy to be there." I didn't know. That one made me sit down. Not because Lila mattered. She didn't, not really. But her message confirmed what I had suspected for years. Bianca had not merely failed to correct people. She had fed them. I answered with 1 line. The joke only worked because enough people wanted it to. Lila replied with a thumbs up, then deleted it, then sent. "You're right. I'm sorry." I left it there. Adrian disappeared faster than anyone. I heard from Owen, who heard from someone else, that Adrian had left the gala before dessert. Bianca later forwarded a message through Mara during one of her attempts to prove that everyone was abandoning her, and I saw the line from Adrian. "I didn't sign up for this. I think this is between you and your family." That was the man she had invited to make me feel replaceable. Conrad's trouble became practical. The review didn't ruin him, but it clipped him. Victor and the board required tighter oversight around public commitments. The charity committee quietly removed Conrad from direct pledge conversations for a while. Donors who had enjoyed his speech started asking questions through their advisors instead of taking his calls. He wasn't destroyed. He was inconvenienced in the exact language he had spent years using to control people. Elaine's fall was quieter. She tried softness first. She left voicemails about grace, dignity, privacy, and how families must not let one unfortunate evening define them. When Mara responded instead of me, Elaine's tone sharpened. In one voicemail she said, "Damien, refusing to speak directly is not maturity. I almost laughed when Mara forwarded that one. For years, Elaine had used manners as a velvet rope. She decided who belonged, who stood outside, and who should be grateful just to be near the entrance. The moment the rope was removed, she called boundaries rude. Bianca was harder. Not legally, emotionally. Because my anger was clean at first, but grief has a way of making things muddy. I would wake up and remember her laughing as she clipped the badge to my jacket. Then I would remember her asleep on Sunday mornings, hair messy, insisting pancakes were dessert because anything that needs syrup is trying too hard. The woman who hurt me and the woman I loved were not two different people. That was the part that made it ache. I moved into a smaller place without ceremony. I took my documents, personal records, the wedding photo from the drawer, a few books, my father's watch, and the ridiculous mug Bianca had bought me years earlier that said, "Probably right." I almost left the mug. Then I packed it because I didn't want every object to become a custody hearing in my head. I put my wedding ring in a drawer. I didn't throw it out. I didn't sell it. I didn't make a dramatic video. I just stopped wearing it. Mara handled the money boundaries. Separate accounts. Written communication. No direct property conversations. No rushed signatures. Prior transfers documented. Decision rights reaffirmed. The untransferred pledge was formally withdrawn. The proposed amendment was dead. Bianca tried to frame the withdrawal as cruelty. "You're punishing innocent people," she wrote in one message that Mara forwarded because it involved the pledge. Mara responded, "Damien is not obligated to authorize personal funds while facing undisclosed pressure to alter marital property rights. Future charitable discussions must be separated from marital negotiations." That was Mara's way of saying no. Bianca hated no when it came in complete sentences. A month after the gala, she requested a private meeting. I refused. Then she requested a meeting with someone neutral. Mara suggested attorneys be present. Bianca agreed, probably because she thought seeing me across a table would let her find the old buttons. We met in a conference room with water glasses, legal pads, and the kind of neutral lighting that makes everyone look slightly guilty. Bianca arrived wearing a softer version of herself. Less jewelry. A simple blouse. Hair pulled back. She looked tired. I hated that I noticed. She sat across from me and waited until the attorneys finished their opening remarks. Then she looked at me and said, "I didn't think you'd let them announce it like that." I said, "I didn't think you'd pin a staff badge on your husband." Her eyes flashed. I was angry. "You were prepared." "That's not fair." There was a seating chart. Adrian had a premium seat. Your father had an envelope. Your phone showed his message. You had the badge ready. She swallowed. "You saw that?" "Yes." For the first time, she looked afraid of something other than embarrassment. I leaned back. "Make him feel small tonight. He signs easier when he thinks he doesn't belong." Her attorney's pen stopped moving. Bianca looked down at her hands. "I didn't write that," she said. "No, you just followed it." She looked up quickly. "You don't understand what it was like. My father was panicking. The company, the donors, the board, everything was fragile. And you were always so calm about it, like none of it touched you. I helped save it." "I know." "No, Bianca. You knew enough to use me. Not enough to respect me." Her face crumpled, then hardened again. That was Bianca's pattern. Vulnerability was allowed only in flashes. If it lasted too long, she armored it with blame. "You never fit into those rooms," she said quietly. And I was embarrassed by how different we were. That was the first honest thing she had said in months. It should have helped. It didn't. "Different wasn't the problem," I said. "You deciding different meant lower was the problem." She pressed her lips together. "You let people think what they thought. I let you correct them. You stopped. You could have told everyone." "I didn't marry everyone." The room went silent. Her attorney shifted in his chair. Bianca's voice dropped. "So 9 years means nothing?" "It means I stayed longer than I should have because I remembered who you were before you enjoyed humiliating me." She wiped under one eye, angry at the tear. "I made one mistake." "No," I said. "You made a story. Then you made a stage. Then you handed me a costume." She stared at me like she wanted to hate me enough to make this easier. I wished she could. I wished I could. The separation moved forward after that. By the end of the year, the legal separation was final. The property dispute was resolved in writing. The amendment Conrad wanted was rejected and never revived. Bianca received what the existing agreements required, not what her father tried to pressure me into surrendering. My decision rights remained intact. Prior funding was accounted for. The withdrawn pledge stayed withdrawn. Anything connected to the company went through formal channels, not family dinners, not gala speeches, not sealed envelopes carried under Conrad's arm. I lost money. Anyone who tells you a clean exit costs nothing has never paid attorneys while grieving. But I kept the things I couldn't afford to lose: control, records, and the ability to look at myself without hearing Bianca's laugh in the background. Conrad never apologized. He sent one stiff message through counsel months later, saying he regretted the optics of the evening. Mara asked if I wanted to respond. I said no. Elaine sent a handwritten note to my new place, which I never told her about directly, but she found it through paperwork. It said she hoped time would soften unnecessary wounds. I put it back in the envelope and forwarded it to Mara. Lila sent one more text around the holidays. For what it's worth, people know now. I'm sorry I helped make it funny. I didn't answer, but I didn't hate her for sending it. Adrian did what men like him do when the lighting changes. He stepped out of the frame and pretended he had never posed. Bianca tried one last time after the separation agreement was signed. She sent a message through Mara asking for a direct conversation, as two people who once loved each other. Mara asked me if I wanted to accept. I almost did. That's the embarrassing truth. Part of me wanted to sit across from Bianca without attorneys and hear her say the exact words I had needed months earlier. Not because I wanted to reconcile, but because there is a childish part of pain that wants the person who broke something to finally describe the damage correctly. Instead, I told Mara she could forward a written message only. Bianca's message came the next day. I know I hurt you. I know the gala went too far. I was embarrassed and scared, and I let my father push me. But I loved you, Damien. I still don't understand how you could walk away from 9 years over one night. I read it twice. Then I wrote a reply and sent it to Mara, not Bianca. The gala wasn't one night. It was the night I stopped denying the pattern. I didn't leave because Bianca handed me a badge. I left because she finally showed me the role she had written for me. Mara sent it. Bianca didn't respond. The first Sunday morning in my place after everything was final, I made pancakes. I ate them at the small kitchen table with coffee that was too strong because I hadn't learned how to make coffee for only myself yet. For 9 years, I had measured the grounds for two people without thinking. I sat there in the quiet, no gala photos, no donor list, no group of people waiting for Bianca's cue to decide if I mattered. The pancakes tasted like breakfast. Maybe dessert too. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt released. There is a difference. Triumph still wants an audience. Release turns off the lights and goes home. Bianca wanted me to know my place. So I found it, outside a marriage where respect had to be earned by humiliating me first. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.